Hello and welcome. Thank you for taking interest in our seminar today. My name is Danny Roberts. I'll be introducing myself and Amanda in a moment. We hope that you are both safe and well. You will have seen from the previous screen that there is a Q&A that you can type your questions into, and some people have already started asking some questions. What we'd like to say is with so many people registered for this event, we may not be able to answer all of your questions, but our plan is to look to come back to you with an email response with any questions that we can answer. So thank you very much for attending today. We hope that this session will not be any longer than 1 hour and is likely to be less to give you a little bit more time back at your desk or wherever you may be. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just introduce myself. My name is Danny Roberts. I'm the Global Head of Training for SGS Certification and Business Enhancement. I started with SGS in 2018 and I'm based here in the UK, but I tend to travel the world quite a lot, but not right now, as you can imagine. Responsible for the strategy of how we deliver and what we deliver for our customers. I have been in the industry for well over 14 years. Both on two sides, actually. I've been both a learning and development director within an HR function within a business, and also been on the other side of the fence where I'm offering services to our customers for training services, whether that be one course, whether on public or whether it be private, through to a whole service load of training. So fully understand the process of training and how we plan training and how we look to train our people in our businesses and ourselves, of course. What I'll do now is just hand over briefly to Amanda before I take the reins back, and Amanda can introduce herself.
Thank you, Danny. Hello, my name is Amanda Mangan. I'm the Global Training Manager. I started with SGS back in 2012 and currently manage the global SGS Academy training portfolio, which includes everything from accredited, non-accredited training through to research, development, design, delivery, and looking at the business models. I've got over 25 years experience in HR, learning and development, training, recruitment and assessment, and have worked for the last 10 years within the TIC industry, within the commercial global training offerings.
Thanks, Amanda. So without further ado, what are we going to talk about today? Technical training is changing is definitely the title of what we're looking at. We'll look at the COVID-19 impact and future trends, what you can do as an organization. So this is about being practical. How have SGS adapted? Let's look at some learning methodologies and academy solutions and support if you feel you need those. But the main aim of the session is really about sharing our experience and what we understand of it, rather than to have a theoretical discussion today. So being quite practical is really what we're aiming to do. So basically, the coronavirus pandemic has actually sped up change, and training is changing, is really what we're saying. Society's reaction and the economic reactions have been very plain for us to see. We as humans have had to adapt fast, and we've had to adapt very quickly, and we continue to adapt to that. And of course, that means that there are certainly some things that are impacting for us. So technical training is changing. The corporate purse, like the personal purse that we all have, has tightened its strings, and that's with the impacted global economies. While some training subjects may be viewed as discretionary or nice to have, technical training that enables businesses to be compliant, meet a standard, or remain in a supply chain has a higher priority to that business and that segment and its success. So training such as soft skills or lower end software training such as Microsoft Office may be less invested in the future, is our view, because that's something that you can pick up quite easily and it's not so technical. For highly technical training that at times demands in-depth discussion and case study to truly work through the complexities of a system, face-to-face training has been highly effective and has been the way that many people have wanted the types of training where we're talking about lead auditors or food safety, really highly technical things where you need to discuss and of course you've got exams and you want to get a good pass rate. It also means that face-to-face sometimes creates stronger networks for you to build your own networking group around. And that's what's been happening today. But rightly for now, we are more nervous of being in a room with strangers, and we are prepared to sacrifice the most efficient form for something that we feel is currently safer. And that style of learning won't be suitable for all, but it's certainly something that we're having to do. The move to digital learning, such as e-learning or virtual classrooms, or VILT as people are calling it, and using video has become more accepted as we all adjust to the new ways of working and maintaining a physical distancing, which is becoming more important. It does mean that parties, the learner and the facilitator need to change their styles to make it work. So we have to adapt, but so do the trainers need to adapt. The advent of software such as Zoom and things has really helped us do that, and it's enabled a better and more interactive experience. And let's not forget that when you're at home, if you've been in lockdown, you've been using these mediums to communicate with your friends or loved ones, and so you're getting used to it. We do think that we do really think that the emergence of digital is good, and we have been adaptive. The classroom use will grow back, though. We do believe that it will grow back, but it's never going to come back fully, and that's because we've all adapted as humans to accept something else. And as confidence returns, that's going to be something that we have to build for you, the workforce. If you're going to come to someone's training room, you're going to want to know that we paid particular attention to cleanliness, physical distancing, and things like that for you to take part in that room. But it's also likely that you're going to be quite happy to do a virtual session in the way that this webinar is running. So change has come and training is changing. There's no doubt about that. So it is all about changing our knowledge and skills and habits. That's what training's there for. But actually training is actually having to think about changing itself and to keep up with the speed that's been caused by the emergency. So training itself is changing, and this is really where we're going to be talking a little bit further in a moment about what we're doing. If you're not aware of who SGS are as a testing and inspection certification business, we do have, it is pretty well known that we're the leader in certification. We have over 94,000 employees across 2,500 offices and laboratories across 11 different industries. So apart from being very large and a world leader in what we do, we're also a company that needs to do what you're trying to do to move on to. We have to train our own people, so we, like you, also have our own challenges as a business in terms of developing our people, in terms of change. And internally, we have our own SGS campus that we work with to make that happen. So really, it's all about the fact that we're having to do some of this. We're helping our other customers do that. So the next session, or the next set of slides coming from Amanda, is really about how we're doing that. So I'll now hand you over to Amanda, and do enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, so I'd like to start with the question that I'm sure a lot of you have been asked over the last few weeks. So is training really important right now? Over the years, I know, working in L&D, it was the question that I would always be ready for when circumstances occurred that had a major impact on company finance and revenue. Training has always been one of the areas that's quick and easy to stop and shows immediate bottom line cost benefits. However, further down the line, especially at this time when we're looking at the new norm, will a quick cost-cutting fix now be detrimental to our future plans? The COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that it has brought and continues to bring businesses will be one that will never be forgotten and will also take some time yet to recover from. Training is a key part of both working with our employees towards new strategies to realign and improve efficiency and productivity, and ensuring that everyone is given effective support and knowledge to maintain morale, whether it be strategically at company level, incorporating career development, or to support with personal obstacles and showing commitment to our staff. This in turn will lead to employees buy-in and increased staff retention. So the answer to the question is yes, more so now than ever before. Traditional pre-COVID training within the majority of businesses consisted mainly of on-the-job and classroom-based training that learners have to attend at the given time, place and convenience to the business, sometimes causing conflicts within calendars, performance of day-to-day working, and personal time being used for travel to the venue. Whilst this can be seen as a quick, cost-effective method by the business, this can result in reduced learner engagement during training sessions, which then leads to a lower return in investment of the business resourcing costs. A small percentage of time and budget would be allocated to digital methods. This could be e-learning, virtual learning, or simply a recorded WebEx or a Brainshark. As Danny mentioned previously, training is changing, and we need to ensure that delivery and access to the knowledge is a simple, relevant, and enjoyable experience for users. Training can be perceived as a means to an end, but now it will be key to the future. Delivery of training now has many other considerations that need to be factored in. Technology capability needs to be assessed to ensure that it meets the new norm business requirements, and management and monitoring of training, both from a learner perspective and administrative governance, must be considered. I'll be talking about this in more detail later on in the presentation. I would just like to start with some statistics resulting from COVID-19. So over 80% of learning and development professionals have had to change their L&D strategy and believe it's important to increase the use of digital learning. Prior to the pandemic, less than 50% of organisations embraced any type of digital learning. This has now significantly changed, with only a small minority of businesses going back to what they were doing before. Organisations' spend on digital learning will increase, and this will include digital learning services, digital platforms, and digital learning content. Ongoing training costs for internal and external resources will decrease over time. This will be due to an increase in technology and the associated automation that this generates. The use of technology will streamline business processes to reduce errors and delays, generating a more cost-effective approach for organisations. And there will be an increasing demand for digital learning from top management and stakeholders through to individual employees and your learner end users. So, what can you do as an organisation? So at SGS, we've embraced these changes and opportunities. I'd just like to share with you our findings. We've categorised these into our 6E considerations. So, firstly, you need to understand and examine the impact that the recent months and weeks have had on your employees. Be aware of the physical and mental constraints that they may be under. Take into consideration access to 24/7 news, social media reporting on company closures, redundancies and restructures. Also understand the personal pressures they may be facing, whether this is caring for a vulnerable person, concerns about returning to a working environment using public transport, or just simply leaving the safety of their own familiar surroundings. These will all have an impact on your employee's state of mind, and any new learning approaches must take into consideration all employee concerns. This is key to an effective rollout and gaining the buy-in of your end users. It's important as an organisation to explore and investigate all digital learning options available to meet your company infrastructure, budgets, alignment with your L&D strategy, and end user feedback. There are so many different platforms and tools available that a full needs analysis should be completed prior to researching the market. Ensure that you clearly define requirements by getting input from top management, stakeholders, and a cross-section of end users. Your requirements should be documented and prioritised to help you then assess the market and choose the most appropriate solution. A Moscow analysis can sometimes be helpful for this, as it allows you to prioritise your requirements into a must-have, should-have, could-have, and won't-have. You need to ensure that everyone who is required to take the learning can access the content easily and that it is both relevant to the end user's job role and supports your company objectives. I'm sure we've all previously experienced a time when we've been asked to complete corporate training which we have seen to be irrelevant to our job role and personal development. If you are expecting employees to access your new digital training for the first time, it must make a good first impression. And if it fails to do this, ongoing engagement with learners and digital learning will become more difficult. As with anything, employees that are not used to digital training may feel a little nervous. So you need to take into consideration employees with all levels of technical capability and ensure that the transition enablement from face-to-face classroom training to online digital learning is an enjoyable and beneficial experience, and not one which gives them that sinking feeling when that automated notification to access a piece of online training drops into their inbox. Awareness of local languages, web accessibility requirements, and educational levels for all intended users should also be considered. Organisation recognition, whether it be a company branded attendance certificate, employee scoreboard, or part of a career development pathway, will also give the employee more incentive to complete the training and do it well. So to keep the implementation a smooth one, it's advisable to establish a live support team who can help employees if they experience any problems. Most usability or technical issues can be resolved by a short phone call or virtual session with a real person. A quick resolution will help to keep your end user motivated and engaged in completing the training. It's also important that the support team continually monitor the queries they receive to see whether there are any common issues which can be resolved or logged into an FAQ document, which could be shared with end users for future training programs. Finally, once your system is fully implemented, it's key to ensure that you receive feedback from your employees and stakeholders to evaluate that you have met the objectives of the implementation. It's important to check whether learners feel they've had a good learning experience and that the impact on the business is a positive one. Results from this evaluation can then be used as part of your continuous improvement plan. So how has SGS Academy adapted? By using the 6 E's, SGS Academy has implemented an effective digital system to enhance our offerings to our employees and our clients. So we've done this by digitising our courses, either by offering these through virtual instructor-led training, using online tools such as Zoom and Adobe Connect, or as e-learning, which we offer to individual learners or to whole organisations looking for a consistent approach. Blended learning is an alternative solution, offering a learning pathway made up of a number of learning elements, all contributing to a final training programme. SGS have introduced accredited blended courses incorporating e-learning, virtual classroom training, and face-to-face classroom training. For the face-to-face training, our tutors are trained to ensure that if they're delivering in an external venue to a class of learners, that there are strict rules in place. Any deviation of these rules may result in the learner being asked to leave the training. So we supply checklists to the trainer to check each venue that they are situated in prior to learner arrival, and also a 10-point checklist that every learner attending has to agree to. So this will include anything from use of personal items during the training, personal hygiene, sharing of workshop or group activity materials, use of flip chart pens. And this goes through to the understanding of potential changes in scheduling for comfort breaks and lunches having to be staggered with regards to social distancing. Facilitators and tutors must be given clear guidance if they are required to deliver training within a classroom. SGS also offers bespoke solutions around recovery management, COVID-specific assessments, and business continuity, which SGS Academy aligns all training, recommendations and mandatory requirements around. Okay, so here are the main learning methodologies that can be used as a standalone training course or as part of a bundled solution. The methods need to be user-friendly with a clear journey and end result. There are, of course, pros and cons to any delivery method. So traditional classroom-based training is something we are all familiar with. We expect popularity of this to change moving forward as tutors, learners and their employers look for a safer environment from which to train. Preparation for this type of delivery method moving forward is paramount and is expected to change. E-learning is an autonomous delivery method, giving learners instant remote access to online learning, which can be completed at their own pace. It is already a popular form of imparting consistent knowledge to a wide audience, and its demand is likely to increase as a result of COVID. If an assessment is included at the end of the course, then it can act as a robust compliance training programme to help track and evaluate the learner's knowledge of the subject. E-learning can be developed using many different techniques and approaches, such as the inclusion of videos, animations, audio, scenario-based journeys, or even learner-driven stories. There is no one right way to develop an e-learning course, so requirements, course objectives, translation, budget and technical infrastructure will have to be clarified at the beginning of the project to ensure that you choose the most appropriate design approach. Dependent on the subject, this would need to be a decision made within your business. However, the advice would be not to make your e-learning too onerous or difficult to complete. Otherwise, learner frustration can occur, which will potentially lead to course abandonment. Virtual instructor-led training, or you may hear it referred to as virtual classroom training, can be seen as a middle ground between classroom-based training and e-learning. Learners are still able to access training online remotely, but this would be at a set specific time and date scheduled. The learners would have direct access to a live tutor and be able to collaborate with others on the same course, giving them a real-life classroom experience. You would need to ensure that the tutor has full working knowledge of the tool, and we would recommend that a host is also allocated to a course to deal with any external issues that your learners may face. So, for instance, a loss of audio or they can't see the screen. In this way, the host can work with any issues whilst avoiding the tutor having to detract their attention away from the training delivery and the rest of the group. You would need to ensure that the host and the tutor are fully confident with the tool that you choose to use and that course materials are developed to reflect the new way of delivering. So shorter length courses, webcams, breakout rooms, whiteboards, chats, polls, together with frequent breaks and regular interactivity is paramount with virtual instructor-led training to ensure that learner engagement is present throughout. Blended learning can be an excellent solution that, if well developed, can meet all the needs of your learners, both from a learning experience and knowledge transfer perspective. Within a blend, you can integrate knowledge and skills training using a variety of different delivery methods in a way that responds to all four learning styles, so visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. This could be an option if your organisation has very complex or technical training, which does need to be delivered on a face-to-face basis. You can look at the objectives of your courses and split them into knowledge objectives and skills objectives. So knowledge objectives can be accessed remotely using e-learning or virtual classroom training as a prerequisite, which gives learners a good knowledge understanding prior to attending the face-to-face course or a practical workshop at a later stage to learn the skills. This will also benefit by enabling all learners to be at the same or a very similar knowledge level at the commencement of the face-to-face training or workshop. A blended solution does have to be created carefully to ensure that all learning objectives are met. However, as well as the methods we've already talked about, there are other activities that can be integrated. For example, self-assessments, on-the-job assignments or projects, a research exercise using Google, or just simply reading a white paper. The elements to a blended solution are endless, so it gives you scope for creativity, but just ensure that the focus does remain on the initial objectives of the agreed solution, as it's very easy to keep adding on more elements which can dilute the objectives and scope of your blend model. Learning management systems are a great addition to your business and are platforms for your digital learning to sit on. However, this is not always the most cost-effective decision to make. You will find there are companies that can host digital learning on their LMS for you if implementation of your own corporate LMS is not currently within budget. As discussed earlier, when researching the right LMS for your business, make sure you have completed a full requirements gathering exercise. Some LMSs are truly impressive with the functionalities that they currently offer. However, is it the right fit for your organisation? Do the extra functionalities outweigh the additional costs that could take you over budget? Will it support and align with your training or L&D strategy? So these are just a few questions you can ask yourself to ensure that you're making the right choice for your business. So hopefully the last few slides have given you some food for thought and helped you with looking towards your new normal for learning in light of COVID-19. If you need any support with any points mentioned during this presentation, or with any points included in the slides shown, please do not hesitate to contact us for a further discussion. We do have many years of training experience, from individual learning requirements through to global corporate organisation rollouts, providing one-off training courses through to blended solutions internally and externally in multiple languages. We deliver standard courses against many course categories within the majority of industries and have experience in working with clients to bespoke or tailor courses to meet their specific needs or industries. So I'm just going to briefly show you a few testimonials, really just to highlight learners' feedback on virtual classroom training. So for all of these testimonials, this was their first virtual classroom they attended, and it's really just to highlight the anticipated issues that they thought they might have when attending their first virtual classroom. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because a recording will be sent out, so I'm just going to briefly go through these. So we were talking about being apprehensive. So this is from our quality improvement planning manager from a local government agency. Again, another first time. This was an operation shift manager from an energy company. So talking about their first time workshop presentations. This was from the founder and CEO of an events management company. And finally, this was from a quality assurance manager from a food manufacturer. Just like to highlight here that they were talking about the host and the facilitator and their anticipation about worrying about being foreign to Zoom, which was the tool that we're using. Okay, so you will be sent a recording of this presentation within the next few days, together with a link to download the SGS training brochure. You can also contact us via email, view our website for more information, or connect with us on Facebook or LinkedIn. So thank you for listening. I'd like to pass back to Danny or Cynthiana about any questions.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Hopefully you found that of use. I mean, the aim of the session is to really give you an indication of how things are being done and the tools that are available to you today. We do have some questions, and I think that there's one about how we I'm just having a look here. I think there's one here for Amanda. So there's one. Give us an example of a blended course. What does that look like?
Okay, so an example of a blended course. So if I give you an example of the elements that we use within we have a 5-day lead auditor course, which is our CQI IRCA certified course. So that consists of e-learning course prerequisites. So they would need to complete 4 e-learning modules. So we'd be talking about the autonomous access to those e-learning modules for a learner to complete in their own time. Once they complete that e-learning module, there's a very short knowledge assessment, so a 10-question knowledge assessment just to assess that they've understood the learning within that e-learning module. On completion of that e-learning module and knowledge assessment, which they have to pass, this will automatically then generate a self-assessment. So what they're then doing is they have to complete a self-assessment, which is very much looking at evaluating and almost like a consolidation of the learning that they've taken from the e-learning. They're now putting the knowledge they've learned from the e-learning into a self-assessment and how they can use that within their business or within their job role. They will then submit that self-assessment back through our learning management system, and a tutor would then review that self-assessment, give feedback, and then give the learner access to the next e-learning module. And they would follow the same process for our 4 e-learning modules. So the 4 e-learning prerequisites, so it consists of a knowledge learning e-learning course, a knowledge assessment to evaluate that they've learnt the knowledge from that e-learning, and then the self-assessment to then consolidate the learning that they've got and how they can use that learning within their job role. They have to complete all of those. So there's 4 e-learning courses. So they have to complete all of those e-learning modules and the elements associated with it. They then go on to do either the 3-day face-to-face classroom course to complete the skills objectives of the IRCA course, or alternatively, we are able to offer that 3-day face-to-face training course as a virtual classroom. If they attend the face-to-face course, they can complete the exam within the classroom. If they attend a virtual classroom course, then they can complete an exam online. So as you can see, there's many different elements, but they actually all link from the very first e-learning course through to that final exam. There are different elements and different methods that learning can be delivered. So the knowledge learning would be the e-learning part, and the skills objectives are then picked up within the face-to-face classroom training.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amanda. So that was a good question. Another question that has come in is about lead auditor training. So how would we handle lead auditor training with workshops and exercises? So, I think the comment there is that the classes are quite, breakouts can be difficult to do when you're doing remote.
Yes, I agree. And with the current IRCA criteria, the way that we are delivering those courses at the moment, we are using breakout rooms, but we are then using staggered timings. So what we do is, while the learners are working on the role play or the breakout exercise, we will put the other groups into breakout rooms, working on another piece of work, and then the tutor will have staggered times to be able to take place on those role plays. So it could be that the particular breakout group of 3 or 4 people will have a certain time that the tutor will log on, and then they will then complete their role play. What we do is within our IRCA courses, within all of our virtual courses, one of our criteria is that every learner must have access to the camera and the audio at all times. So we have to be able to see all of the learners 100% of the time. So that does help. So whilst there are areas that are perhaps not as good as a classroom based for role play, we do work it through the platforms that we use with 100% of the webcam being on at all times, so we can engage with the learners throughout those role play exercises.
Thanks for that, Amanda. So there's I have to say the questions are flying in. There's a lot of you out there, that's what I can say, which is great. Thank you very much for those. So one question was, do we offer virtual courses in languages beside English? And the answer to that is yes, we do. Depending on where you are, your local country should be able to confirm that. But because we're delivering virtually, typically if we're in that country, we can deliver it in a different language, and we quite often do. So that would be the answer to that. That was the short answer. There's a couple of questions regarding MOSCOW analysis, MOSCOW, that came in. Now, I can just really quickly give you how that really works. MOSCOW tends to be used by people that do procurement, and it just makes you use M, S, C, and W. So things you must have, things you should have, things you could have, and then things you won't have. So and actually sometimes you need to be very, really strong on what you don't want. So what is it you won't want? Because sometimes it's a bit like buying a mobile phone. You can get something that has too much information, too many functions, and the reality is you don't need all of those functions, and it makes it harder to use. So that's the MOSCOW acronym for you.
Hopefully, so I've just put it up for you, Danny.
Great. Okay, you've put it up on the screen, have you?
Yeah, it's there.
Right.
Must,
should,
have,
could, and won't.
Could and won't. Yeah.
So that's what I'm just scrolling through. There's a little bit more. Do you have a recommendation of methodology according to a theme, so such as environmental management?
We deliver any of our courses. It's very much looking at the content of the course, and what we would do is look at the content of the course to see how that would be best delivered. So I would probably go back to look at, first of all, whether there's knowledge objectives in there. Are there skills objectives? Are you training them? Do you want to train them on something practical? Or is it purely a knowledge-based course that you're trying to get information across? And within that knowledge-based, is there legal documents that someone would need to review first? And it's a fairly sort of straightforward, straight knowledge imparting, or is there something you actually need to train somebody on a type of method or a type of process that you want them to follow? So I think for environmental management as a heading, it's quite difficult, but absolutely more than happy to talk to you offline, that if you have more details, there's definitely different methodologies that can be used. Definitely different methodologies that can be used according to your content and context and real technicality, how much information you want to get across to your audience, and also who your audience are, what's their best way of learning as well.
Thanks for that. There was a question here about for courses that are usually closed with an examination or certificate, how can this be handled? I'm assuming that the question is, if you are at a distance and virtually being run, how can you make sure that the examination is a good examination, or the course is completed in the way you would expect? Okay.
Do you want to answer that, Danny, or do you want me to answer that? Sorry.
I'm happy to. So I think that from our perspective, we have authorization from IRCA to run examinations at distance, and so long as we can what's classed as invigilate or proctor those correctly, or in other words, ensure that the person that is taking the exam takes that exam. There are several methods that you can use. You can use software with different AI to do that with, or you can actually have a camera in the room and somebody at the other end watching it. So you can do it very simply. So you can watch the individual by a camera. They have a camera on, and you just look for eyes away or motions or other things. Or you can actually have some software using artificial intelligence that sets alarms for the many. So you can run it for one person, 1 to say 10 to 12 people is fine with cameras, or you can run 1 to 20 people, and you may have some form of software to keep an eye, which a lot of universities are now investing heavily in. So that would be the answer, I hope, for that. There's a question from Austria regarding.
Sorry, Danny. Can I just add to that, to your
Sure.
response? Just to add to Danny's response, also to take into consideration that if you are looking at doing online exams, we do the 2 different types of tests. So in e-learning, you could have a test incorporated into your autonomous e-learning, which will be automatically generated. So they would access the e-learning and then do the knowledge assessment at the end, which is all automated. If you're doing a face-to-face course, then I agree with Danny's response. But also, if you're wanting to put together your own tests through a face-to-face or virtual instructor-led training course, proctoring and facilitation of that can be easier if you're going to produce a test that has very specific answers, not a test that requires a long, as with SGS, a long audit trail answer, which is more difficult to automatically mark and then generate an automatic score. So if you are thinking of putting together exams and tests, do take a look at the platform that you want to use, and then take into consideration the format and text of those questions that you want to ask, and what type of knowledge you want to get back from your learner. Do you want to get back an understanding of a process from them, or do you literally want them to, do you want to make sure that they've purely understood the learning that they've just taken? Thank you, Danny. Sorry.
You're welcome. There's a question from a customer regarding what training courses we have available in leadership and management, and we can come to you privately on that. It would be wrong to reel out all of our armory for you. There's a question for Amanda. It says, isn't it difficult to learn by e-learning rather than the classroom? Good question.
I think that's a very good question, and I think it's a matter of, there's a lot to take into consideration. When we've done research on this previously, it tends to be very different. There's different types of groups that like e-learning, age groups potentially. You quite often find that the younger employees that are coming in like the e-learning. That's what they're used to doing. That's what they're used to doing at school, at college, at university. If you have older employees, you'll find that perhaps they potentially prefer classroom training because that's what they're used to doing. But I think for e-learning, e-learning is a good base if you literally want to impart knowledge to somebody. This is the knowledge, this is what you need to know, and then you can evaluate that with a test at the end. When it comes to more skills or process training, that's potentially where your other type of training, whether it be built classroom or that's where your face-to-face training comes in. I think there's a place for e-learning, there's a place for both, and it can be dependent again on your audience, on your age of your audience, and which is why often we would look at, that'd be something you could maybe look at, a blended approach, which can then capture all of those different types and methods and ways of learning. So your auditory, your reading, writing, your kinesthetic, within a blend you can capture the learning methods for all of those 4 areas, which should meet hopefully all of your learners' needs, and they will all be able to learn something from that course.
Okay, thanks for that. That's very good. There's one question that came up, which is a really difficult, not a difficult question to ask or answer, and it was from TÜV Austria, and it's about sort of, do all people really want to learn virtually? And actually, the answer to that is that there's, how happy are they to be taking part in these things and not get distracted by many pictures on a screen? And I think that's really about the type of culture that is already prevalent in that country. Some countries absolutely love the classroom and wouldn't want to go anywhere else. Other countries are much more aligned to not being being there, and that actually then leads to B, which is how suited are they to be able to remain in that classroom in a virtual space and remain engaged. And that then leads to, do you train your trainers to work for virtual and improve upon how you deliver? And the answer is you have to. You have to change the style of the training, the delivery of that training, and the tools of engagement have to change in that training too. And I wouldn't say that we were the best at it right now. I don't think anyone is, because it's so it's becoming much newer to many people. But do we focus on that, and are we focusing on it? The answer is definitely yes. We have to change the way we engage with the audience, because we have to recognize that there is a lot of space between you, the person that's facilitating, and the learner. So that's sort of there's about 3 or 4 questions that have come through from there, and I just wanted to tackle that about the sort of it's really about, the question is, are we able to change, and how well can you adapt? And it's really down to the cultures in your country and the technologies available and the age range or the take-up rate for virtual.
Yeah. I agree, and I think it's something that a lot of people will say, I don't want to do virtual classroom training, and you will probably find that the majority of those people perhaps have never actually attended virtual classroom training. So, which is why, going back to my presentation, it's so important that when you do deliver that first virtual classroom training, you make it as user-friendly and as an enjoyable and beneficial experience as you can, because it is the first impressions count. So just that's why it takes a lot of research and doing your Moscow analysis to make sure you've got it right for your first set of employees that you want to attend that training.
Thanks, Amanda. There's a question regarding how we recommend best to evaluate online learning for remote teams. Have we really covered that already, I wonder?
The best way to evaluate the learning, as in, evaluation can take the form of many. It can take the form of on-the-job training to evaluate learning. If it's on-the-job training, it can be assessed by their managers. It can be there can be the knowledge assessment tests, which can be completed. You could even do a virtual classroom. If you wanted your team to do e-learning or online training, you could follow it up with a self-assessment. You could follow it up with a virtual classroom training, or even just a Zoom meeting, or, it's something that even within our blended course that we're working on, working on a Train the Trainer blended course, in which we will be using e-learning courses as prerequisites to get the fundamentals of what training is. But then what we would be looking to do is asking the employees or learners to then run a training session using a virtual classroom. So there are lots of ways that you can evaluate the learning, again, dependent on the content and the team dynamics.
Brilliantly put there. Thank you very much. I think that there's quite a lot of questions that are coming from our colleagues within SGS, and we'll come back to you separately if that's okay. One person was actually saying, how do I get my annual training out to 100% of my people? I think I can answer that is, I really don't know unless I knew your business, but typically these days, most of what we do can be done digitally to reach out to people. It's just how you validate whether you've reached 100% of your people will be the question to be answered. So, yes, you can reach out to those. Yeah. Carry on, Amanda.
Sorry, Danny. And that's where an LMS would come into play as well. If you're sending out if you want 100% of your employees to attend the training, if you've got a learning management system that you have within the company, or if you go somewhere else to use it to host that training, you'll find that may be part of your Moscow analysis, is that you want to ensure that you can get a full reporting system in place so that you can pull off a report to tell you when each person has attended the training, how many goes they've had at doing the training before they passed their test, when they did it, how long they spent doing their training. So that's something that you would need to incorporate into one of your Moscow analysis if you were looking for a learning management system. But that's one very effective way of being able to track that training.
Indeed. LMSs these days, you know that they've received the course, you know if they've opened the course and started the course, and equally you know if they've completed the course, and in some cases a couple of questions at the end of that digital learning will actually validate that course has been taken and they've understood some of it, depending on how much you want to test that. So the learning management system, as Amanda says, is absolutely the key to that. There is always the question of what if they can't get access to the internet, and that's when you have to actually send a trainer out and do face-to-face probably, because if you can't get electricity or digital, and if you're in a mine or something, or you're in a warehouse and you're not allowed into the office, then that's where you have to do that. But some people nowadays are able to hand out tablets and things like that. You log in, take it, the tablet is handed back, and then it's downloaded to an LMS. So there are ways of doing these things. You just have to really, really work out what it is you're trying to achieve. So with that, I think we probably met what we wanted to do for time, and thank you very much for all your questions. There are some questions that are still outstanding, but our desire was to give you 7 or 8 minutes for you to take a natural break, perhaps before your next meeting or whatever it is you want to do wherever you are in the world. And from Amanda and myself and our team, we really appreciate the time taken and the time spent listening to this webinar. Any feedback that you have in terms of what would be good going forward for you, whether it's too long, too short, we're always learning too, and we're open to that as well. So without further ado, I thank you very much for your time. Amanda, if you'd like to close.
Yep, so really just to reiterate, thank you very much for your time. I've just put that slide back up. If anyone wants to contact us, please don't hesitate to. If you suddenly think of a question after this, please don't hesitate to drop us an email. We will be sending this presentation out to you, so hopefully give you the opportunity to review. I do appreciate there was probably a lot of information in there, but again, thank you for your time and look forward to hopefully working with you in the future. Stay safe. Thank you.